Hi, everyone, and welcome to the member webinar series and the webinar on the No Time to Lose campaign, Tackling Occupational Cancer Together. Just a couple of housekeeping reminders before we get underway. Everyone's microphones are muted so we don't encounter any additional noises. We'll be taking questions at the end of the webinar today. So to ask a question, please click on the orange arrow to pop out the GoToWebinar program window. Then click on the question chat box to open it and input your question in the text box. Duncan will ask for questions, and I'll go ahead and read your questions out loud to Duncan for him to answer. So let's get underway. I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Duncan Spencer. Duncan is a recognized thought leader in the field of occupational safety and health, a regular guest speaker at conferences. He is a published author on the subject area with a book and many articles, blogs, and columns covering different aspects of OSH. He is presently the head of advice and practice for the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health and a chartered fellow. Duncan is an expert in applying a risk-led and evidence-driven approach to safety, building his knowledge by working in many different industrial sectors and government public organizations. This includes agriculture, construction, retail distribution, healthcare, charities, uniform public services, and manufacturing in the UK and overseas. Please welcome Duncan.
So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this webinar. The Institution of Occupational Health is a lead global body for health and safety practitioners around the world, and hopefully many of you have heard of it before, and perhaps there are one or two that are members too. We are responsible for really leading the membership of the profession as far as we can in terms of being a champion, an advisor, an advocate, a trainer for safety and health professionals working in organisations of all sizes. Its focus is to support members and their efforts to create workplaces that are safer, healthier, and importantly these days more sustainable. So as the voice of the profession, we campaign on issues that affect millions of working people. We set standards and support, develop and connect members with resources, guidance, events and training. We focus on professionalism, that is competently advising on the prevention of harm and ill health to people in the workplace. So we have quite a number of members, as you can see by this particular slide. We also have a training arm that delivers training across the globe now. We provide free tools and resources, some of which I'm going to be talking to you about today in terms of No Time to Lose Asbestos. And of course, we have research that we deliver, primary research in terms of trying to find out new things for the profession to get a hold of and use effectively in their workplace to reduce harm and ill health. And of course, we act to be a campaigner on all sorts of things related to health and safety, and in particular pressurising government and business and other lead organisations as best we can. So our strategy, our Work 2022 strategy, has a 5-year plan, so you can see that we're already halfway through it, is to enhance, collaborate and influence. So we hope to enhance people's understanding of health and safety topics. We want to collaborate with people in order to be able to advertise those ideas as far as we can across the world, and to good effect in terms of being able to influence change that is positively within the workplace. Hence why we are now working with peer organisations like the NSCA Foundation and partnering with them to achieve similar kinds of things. So let me now get on to the No Time to Lose campaign, which is what you're all here for, of course, and talk about occupational cancer. So as you can see by the slide here, there are at least 742,000 people that die from work-related cancer every year. and if you work that out, then that comes to around about a death a minute in terms of an average. These are pretty accurate figures. They come from the International Labour Organization, working in partnership with a number of other lead global bodies around the world. So it's a good figure that has got some substance to it. So I think you'll find that at least half of all the work-related deaths in the European Union, for example, have been due to occupational cancer. So clearly that's not tolerable, because occupational cancers, of course, can be prevented. In the UK, if you excuse me, starting at that point, which is where our campaign started, we've become very aware of the fact that there were an unquestionably high number of cancer deaths a year, and cancer registrations, and in particular our focus our attention was drawn to the construction industry, since about 40% of our members work in that area. So having launched that, we then started to, in the UK, we started to look around the globe, and we realized that other people are having similar kinds of experience with occupational cancer, and of course here we found some stats for you from an Australian perspective. In actual fact, the Cancer Council Australia website states that this figure of £5,000, 5,000 people, new cases of occupational cancer a year. It also flags that at most risk are those that are working in the farming, driving, mining and transport areas, but it's not exclusive. And of course they do also flag that there are more men sufferers than women. So since Australia has the highest proportion of, second highest proportion of cases of mesothelioma in the world, it is clearly something that is, I'm sure, dear to your heart to try and get a grip of, as it is with ours. It also is interesting to note that Australia and New Zealand have the world's highest incidence of skin cancers, which of course are also occupationally generated from people who are working outdoors. The International Agency for Research on Cancer, they cite the fact that there are some 50+ agents that can cause occupational cancers, and some of those are listed on this slide for you here. And of course, in terms of being able to raise our people's awareness for this is absolutely key to the No Time to Lose campaign. And it's okay to raise people's awareness, but unless we also give them free practical advice and original materials, then we're not enabling people to take the next step. And hopefully when they do take the next step, they'd want to secure their commitment to it, and perhaps sign on to the campaign on our website and such like, as I'll come to later. So the No Time to Lose campaign has actually had 4 phases so far. And if you go on to our No Time to Lose website, you will find information on diesel exhaust, fuse, engine exhaust fumes, solar radiation, respiratory crystalline silica, and of course asbestos. And you will get from those websites free information to use within your organizations. So there are posters to download, there are leaflets to download, and what we call Z cards, that are pocket cards. So all of those things are aimed at the worker. And of course there is also guidance material and fact sheets and such like for you to use to take further than that if you wish, in all of these 4 areas. So spotlight today is on asbestos exposure at work, of course, from work. So for Britain and Australia continue for now to be the 2 nations proportionately worst affected by the industrial legacy of asbestos, I'm afraid. So there are about, however, across the globe, 125 million people who are exposed to asbestos. And maybe about 100,000 to 200,000 lives are lost every year. It's not quite certain what that is, because in many developing parts of the world, the data collection isn't as good as perhaps others, and so it is sometimes difficult to know whether it has been properly diagnosed and whether that data has been captured, but certainly that seems to be a reasonable figure to estimate. Asbestos is banned in 67 countries of the world. As many of you will know, it was banned in Australia on the 31st of December 2003. The unfortunate thing, of course, is that asbestos-containing materials have been used extensively in construction. So tons and tons of asbestos can be found in the fabric of buildings. So just because there has been a ban on asbestos doesn't mean that it no longer exists. And unfortunately, I think that is a key message that often doesn't get across to young people in particular. And amazingly, when we know that so much harm is produced by this stuff, amazingly there are still people who are mining asbestos around the world and using it, as this slide shows. So some of you may know this, others may not, but in terms of what asbestos is, there are different forms. The three most common are actually shown here on this slide, and as I say, it is used to strengthen materials. It's used to provide fire protection and chemical protection because it has good inert properties. So mostly, rather than talking about asbestos, lots of people actually talk about asbestos containing materials, or for short ACMs, if you see that phrase. So the fibres themselves are really quite tiny. Now I'm conscious here that we've got a 1p piece from the UK, but I'm sure that relates to a cent piece or a dime or something of that nature. And as you can see by the slide here, they are minute, they're microscopic. And that's the problem, because you can't see them suspended in the air when you breathe them in. And yet these microscopic fibers, when they get into the alveoli of the lungs, start to scratch the surface, and the body then reacts by forming plaques or other devices, and of course eventually can develop into a cancerous growth. So where can you find asbestos? Well, pretty much everywhere in construction. As you can see here, you've got spray coatings, lagging, insulation boards, asbestos yarns, fire cement. You've got insulation in heating systems, mastics, sealants, floor tiles, you name it, is kind of almost everywhere, anywhere. So one of the things that is really important, particularly for tradespeople, is that they are given this information, that they understand what it looks like, and they are therefore more aware when they go into different environments to understand where they are with the asbestos side of things. So who is at risk? As you can see there are a number of trades on the left-hand side: construction, electrical, metal forming, vehicle trades, metal manufacturing, shipping, heating engineers, all sorts of people who find themselves in that unfortunate position. But don't forget that there are other people too. You know, in the UK there is a discussion at the moment around schools, for example, because asbestos had been used to insulate schools from fire and other things, and now that is degrading, and there is dust in the air, and teachers are starting to complain that they are being exposed, etc. And there are lots and lots of asbestos in domestic properties, so you know, people have to think about their own properties too. So health risks include things like pleural plaques, pleural thickening, asbestosis, lung cancer, mesothelioma. These are all things that that are covered in a little bit more detail in the slide pack, which you'll have access to at a later after the webinar. But essentially, it's not good stuff. It's been around since 1895, and we've known that it's been harmful since about 1924, and we've been tracking how much harm since about 1955, I suppose. And those figures are from this country. I'm sure it's something similar to your own. So mesothelioma cases in Australia. There were 732 Australians diagnosed in 2014, and in fact I understand that recently there was a gentleman called Matthew Werfel of Adelaide who won a $3 million compensation case against a former asbestos manufacturer, James Hardy, after he developed a rare form of mesothelioma in 2017. He'd been exposed to asbestos in the 1990s and early 2000s, pulling down fences and renovating 2 homes. So, if we get this wrong, then, if you want to be hard-nosed and business about it, it can really affect the bottom line and the trading health of an organization if we don't control this properly. Symptoms, it's pretty important that, again, all employees who are maybe potentially exposed understand what these symptoms are. And if these symptoms actually do start to manifest themselves, then they should seek medical help immediately. That's of course for the physical harm that's going on, but don't forget there are mental harm effects as well. If you know that you've got asbestos, you know that there's no real cure for that, and of course that affects your mental health, and of course it will affect the mental health of their families as well when their loved ones are suffering. And you see them slowly deteriorating over time. So managing it is the most important message of the day, really. And in order to be able to manage it, you do need to know where it is. So you need to have proper surveys done. You need to have local asbestos registers to show where it is. You need to complete a risk assessment in terms of asking yourself, since we know where it is, how might it be damaged and thereby asbestos fibres released? And therefore, what are we going to do in order to be able to prevent that? So you then create the management plan, and then you work on those materials. Most organisations, because it's terribly expensive to be able to remove it, are into managing it. Don't go near it, don't damage it, and so on and so forth, and remove it in those high risk areas only. But don't forget, when trades are coming in and they're starting to do things like invasive work, that asbestos can be hidden behind panels and under floors and so on and so forth. So the management plan has to include doing further surveys at some point. And of course, you need to inform your employees, because if they need to know where it is, so they need to know they need to be careful around it, and train them in their awareness. And you need to think very carefully about how you're going to investigate asbestos incidents to make sure that you learn from them and don't make the same mistakes again. From the employee point of view, they need to have this 6-point plan in terms of being able to deal with what they're facing. So first thing is stop work immediately. Move everybody away from the area. Do not remove the materials. Close, seal or lock off the area, put up warning signs and report it to your employer. I'd add to that as well, be very careful, because if their clothing is covered in the dust, then one of the additional instructions would be to remove all clothing at the site, obviously trying not to disturb the dust any further, and moving away from the site in I don't know, your underpants or whatever it might be, in order to be safer, as it were, because otherwise you're going to be spreading the fibres throughout the organisation as you walk away from the area, which you want to avoid. So you do have to do some thinking in and around this, I think. From the asbestos removal point of view, only specialised contractors, because they need special equipment, specialist knowledge. It's a very detailed and careful process to be able to remove these microscopic fibres from the environment, both from the ACM itself and potentially anything that is released while the ACM is being removed. So there has to be enclosures that are properly sealed and tested around the outside with air monitoring. But of course, air monitoring can also be used at other times as well. So if you found asbestos in your environment and you think that it might have been disturbed, then one of the ways of checking, of course, is to get somebody in to complete an air monitoring survey for you. So when workers are exposed, as I've mentioned, they do need to go to a medical practitioner as early as possible, which sometimes with some tradesmen that goes against the grain, because they think they're big, they're strong, they're invincible, and so on and so forth. But the earlier that this can be catched, the better the prognosis in terms of the longevity of life. But as I say, don't forget the emotion and fear that is associated with this. So no time to lose. I've kind of given you a quick run through this. It's now over to you. But as I've said, we do give you lots of additional information than than I can cover in this very quick presentation. And you can download these materials with our partner NSCA Foundation, and from their website, and also from the IOSH website if you have any issues with that. So you'll find fact sheets, guidance, posters, leaflets, pocket cards that you can print off and use for your workforce. And if you have a mind to, then please do join our campaign. It is growing exponentially at the moment in the number of organisations that have signed up to the No Time to Lose campaign against occupational cancer. And you can even go further than that and take a pledge with your organisation to say that your business is really adhering to this 6-point plan and pledging action. And in which case you might well be happy to present some good practice case studies for the benefit of other people, as these forward-thinking companies have done. We'd be very happy to take those things on and present what you're doing to the world. And of course, we have been quite successful so far, but we are maintaining that success. We've got media coverage that has reached over 83 million people. We've got 8 million social media impressions that have been generated, 142,000 visitors on our website, 111,000 resources have been downloaded. Campaign films have been viewed 47,000 times. Though there are some films embedded in this presentation that I've not had time to show today, but you will see if you download the presentation afterwards. There's 22,000 campaign packs, there's 350 organisations signed up, and IOSH are proud to say that they've won the Chartered Institute of Public Relations Mark of Excellence Award in 2018 on the back of this successful campaign. So the No Time to Lose website is, the details are there for you and within the slide pack when you download it, so you can see where to go. So that's about it, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Hannah.
Thanks, Duncan. If anybody has any questions, they can go ahead and submit it now, and I'll read them out loud to Duncan. I don't have any in at the moment, but I'm sure we'll get some.
Crikey.
In.
I haven't made that much sense, have I? I hope so.
And just a reminder to everyone, we will be posting this up on our website as well. So you can take this with you as a reference. And we'll just give it another minute or so, wait for some questions. Okay, we have one that came through. All right, so one question: how many Australian companies have pledged support to date?
That's a good question. I don't have that information to hand, but we can certainly find that information for you. To the best of my knowledge, this is a new campaign within Australia, so this is one of this presentation is one of the starts of that campaign, if you will. But we can find that information, and we'll feed it back to you, Hannah, so that you can publicize that.
Okay, great. Any more? Okay, it doesn't look like we have any more. So thanks again, Duncan, for presenting today. Hopefully everyone tuning in today learned a few things. And we'll go ahead and close up with Duncan. And just a couple things before we sign off today. Just a reminder to all members about new website and portal, which you would have used initially to register for today's webinar. And like I said earlier, a copy of today's recordings will be available within 24 hours in the member portal, along with all event recordings, over 30 editions of the National Magazine, and more. If you're having trouble logging in to your or to add new contacts, please contact our membership team. And another reminder, Safety Connect is coming up on the 28th and 29th of August, and that's at the Crown Conference Center. and a few upcoming events as well. Like I said, the National Safety Conference. We also have a pre-conference workshop on the 27th, and our National Safety Awards of Excellence on the 17th of October. Finalists have finally been announced for that one. And that's it from us today. Thank you for joining us for the member webinar series, and thank you for your continued support with the NSCA Foundation. We will see you next time. Thank you.